I'll have to say the Gordon Cole line right now, which I really love, which is, "You remind me today of a small Mexican chihuahua." From Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would like very much to continue on with our discussions of this great show, this historic landmark show, in fact, which is called Twin Peaks. And we have been going through this series episode by episode with these videos. And that brings us today to a discussion about episode 13, a very interesting episode, packed episode like they all are. Yes, let us talk today about episode 13, which means that we will be focusing in on the events leading up to and including those found in episode 13. That means also that let us wait until later before we talk about some details of any subsequent episodes. We can probably make some hints or maybe make some suggestions of things that might come in later episodes or in later parts of the series. But for now, let us focus primarily on the events leading up to and including those that can be found in episode 13. This great episode, Leslie Linka Glatter and Harley Payton and Robert Engels. So also, I should say that I don't hold myself out to be in any way an expert when it comes to Twin Peaks. I am not an expert, so I will get many of the details wrong, as I'm sure I have up to now in these discussions, but I will do my best. And also, I do say that I come to this discussion series as a fan, a fan who has seen the series a number of times and has enjoyed it every single time. So, and now this time I'm rewatching it and I'm just having fun all over again. And so without further ado, my friends, let us talk about this great episode, episode 13. And where do we begin but perhaps with this cliffhanger that we saw from the previous episode. Madeline, or Maddie, and Donna are in danger because they are now in Harold Smith's place, having tried to get the secret diary of Laura Palmer. But Harold found them out and he's so angry to the point where he scratches his own face with that claw thing. And it reminds me of Margaret's line in the diner, "I'll have a bear claw." You know, I know it's not a bear claw in that sense, but it's still a claw, and a very frightening one at that, because he now scratches his own face. Much like, I always thought this was like, I don't know if you've seen the film Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. There's a very similar type of look or aesthetic in terms of scratches on the face. But in any event, yes, it would be interesting to see Harold Smith versus Bruce Lee. But in any event, we have this very frightening situation and dangerous situation. Madeline and Donna, what's going to happen? And indeed, too, Harold is expressing anger, frustration. He feels betrayed. He sees that Donna has betrayed him and has betrayed his trust and confidence. And perhaps from a certain perspective, she has. Although one can also say that it also seems that maybe in parallel or at the same time or simultaneously, Donna did seem to have some genuine emotion, an emotional connection with this individual who's named Harold Smith, a very fascinating and very curious character in the world of Twin Peaks. And very important too, because of the way in which he has this ability to capture the stories of people, including those of Laura Palmer. Of course, at the same time, he also acknowledges secrets and impenetrability, the inability to penetrate this barrier of secrets that Laura Palmer seems to have encompassed. And indeed, I mentioned this before, but Dr. Jacoby, who we understand now is currently away on holiday recovering from his heart attack. He did mention this in a previous episode about there were secrets that couldn't be fathomed or couldn't be discovered, even when he tried or when he had his own sessions. Well, Harold Smith serves that function as well, but he also has his own situation because he can't seem to leave the inside quarters of his dwelling. And indeed, Donna seems to realize this because when James comes to the rescue at very perfect timing, he comes in. Interestingly enough, I don't know if this was meant on purpose in terms of the shooting, but when you see James come in, you note that he goes for Madeline first, and he kind of seems to almost leave Donna behind as a kind of afterthought. I know that's not the case because you see or you hear immediately, "Come on, Donna," or something. So the implication is that James is rescuing both of them. Indeed, he does. But it's an interesting little quick shot of that. And so I don't know if that was meant maybe subliminally to further the love triangle among Madeline and Donna and James. But in any event, he rescues both of them. And we know this too because he got a little bit of an inkling of what they were planning. Starting from the diner when he was sitting there in the previous episode, of Madeline very suspiciously comes in and says, "Oh, coffee to go." And say, "Oh, what? You don't have coffee at the Palmer's house?" "Oh, no," and it just goes off, telling James what the plan is between Donna and Madeline. But indeed, James gets wind of something, and he just, luckily for them, it reminds me too, right, of Hawk when he rescues Dale Cooper and Sheriff Harry Truman at the very, very key moment at One Eye Jack's. Good thing for them, he couldn't keep a secret. Well, same thing for Madeline and Donna. Good thing for them that they couldn't keep a secret from James anyway. So he comes in, rescues them at the last minute. They tried to get the diary, but of course the diary fell, and so it was then retrieved once again by Harold. And afterwards lets out this very almost violent and tragic scream, with the orchids and the flowers there. It's almost like animal-like in terms of the pain and sorrow that he must be feeling. But in any event, yes, this leads to Madeline going away, and then almost a reconciliation or coming together once again of Donna and James in a manner of speaking. And I think this will be emphasized too in a scene later on when we get the wonderful idyllic scene by the lake and the beautiful music, the theme music, and it's played over it. It feels like a very resounding a place of punctuation, because this is where Madeline is sitting. James comes and sits by her, and they have a heart-to-heart conversation about what it was they were feeling and what James was feeling, and that maybe there was something between them. And Madeline admits, too, that she liked it, and that she knew, or she got the sense that he was falling for her because of her resemblance to Laura. And she liked it, and she allowed it. And James says, "Oh, it was wrong," but Madeline, very interestingly enough, says it wasn't right or wrong. It was what it was, or she makes that suggestion. So that's a very interesting thing, that Madeline doesn't immediately shy away from this, but in fact, she's very honest and upfront and open about it. And what's more, she doesn't say that it was wrong, what it was they were feeling. So I really find that to be a very fascinating aspect of Madeline's character here. Also, we have to say that what she says too is about her relationship with Laura. They had a very similar look, and they had fun playing off of that similarity when they were growing up, at least according to Madeline. But when Laura died, then it was an opportunity for Madeline to, in a sense, step into the role of Laura or become Laura. Now, this is a very, very, I think, interesting point to make, because we have to remember that Laura is in many ways the hole in the donut, right? It's because of her presence/absence that the whole series seems to be revolving around. For example, the Donna-James relationship. This is premised on the absence/presence of Laura Palmer. Well, indeed, a similar phenomenon could be said to be happening with regard to Madeline, because she says that she didn't start to feel like she was Laura, or she didn't step into that place until Laura was gone. And so it's almost like the absence of Laura Palmer then left this type of vacuum, which then allowed for Madeline, who looks very similar to Laura Palmer, to then step into that role, even if it was temporary or for a moment. Now, let us keep this in mind, because we might see instances where doppelgangers or similar people or similar looking people might be stepping into the shoes or roles of the actual person in that person and that actual person's absence. And let's see how this plays out. In other words, someone will seem almost to look familiar to the actual person at the moment when that actual person is absent, which is a very interesting phenomenon indeed. The absence of someone causes the similarities to become even more pronounced. And so let's see how that plays, because we see this in terms of similarities, twins, doubles, and the like. So, but let's keep this in mind going forward. Now, this is the goodbye scene between Madeline and James, because Madeline says that she'll be leaving. She came here for Laura's funeral, The funeral occurred, and now it's time for her to go home, Missoula, Montana. So we have to say goodbye to Madeline. And indeed, James says, this is in great James way, because when Madeline steps to leave, gives him a kiss, goodbye, you notice he just keeps looking towards the water. He doesn't turn back when she steps away. So that's almost a very, it's almost, cool. James is cool, right? James is pretty cool like that, calm and collected, right? And he's looking towards the lake. I mean, if I were James, I would be looking back at Madeline, maybe waving goodbye or something like that, but not. And this is a cool moment. And indeed, it's the heightened drama of Twin Peaks. It's moments like this that make Twin Peaks Twin Peaks. It's great, absolutely great. So, what are some other moments that occur with this? So that's the Donna, James, Madeline, and Harold Smith plot line. Also going on with this is the rescue of Audrey Horne from the previous episode. And now she's back, and they realize, Dale Cooper and the authorities realize that she was injected with heroin, and it was that close to a lethal dose, which is a very frightening, chilling thing to think about. Again, showing us the danger of this character named Jean Renault. Speaking of Jean Renault, right, because then Sheriff Truman recognizes and IDs Jean Renault from a past book of mugshots. And also, Sheriff Truman remembers that detail of the shot of the surveillance camera footage from the casino, that time that they infiltrated One-Eyed Jacks, and there's Cooper there. And so Cooper puts two and two together. But of course, according later to Gordon Cole, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Regional Bureau Chief Gordon Cole, 2 and 2 do not always make 4. But in this case, maybe 2 and 2 makes 4, in the sense that Dale Cooper puts together the pieces that this was a plot against him, that they were going to kill him, and that Jean Renault was somehow after him for what he connects it, right, in terms of the connection between Jacques Renault, Bernard Renault, and Jean Renault. So Dale Cooper recognizes the plot against him by Jean Renault. So that's good for Cooper for putting 2 and 2 together like that. But then, of course, he's under danger. So we have to keep that in mind too. So this rivalry, shall we say, this antagonism a la Jean Renault. But going forward too, I mentioned Gordon Cole. So we have to mention here the great introduction or reintroduction Federal Bureau of Investigation Regional Bureau Chief Gordon Cole. I know that's a mouthful, but he says he can't hear himself anyway. But Gordon Cole, we've heard him before over the intercom after the episode between Harry Truman and Albert Rosenfield. He says he won't be coming back, but he has the results of the report, Albert's great report. The fibers come from a vicuna coat. And I love Sheriff Truman's, right, I'm sorry, I'm going to do a very bad David Lynch impersonation, because it was, Gordon Cole is being played by none other than David Lynch, right, talking about vicuna. The coat was vicuna, and then of course fibers from a vicuna coat, and I should say Sheriff Truman, the coat was vicuna, right? So again, I do a very bad Sheriff Truman, I do a very bad Gordon Cole. I'll have to say the Gordon Cole line right now, which I really love, which is, "You remind me today of a small Mexican chihuahua." That's a great line, and of course it'll come later. Well, let's talk about it now, because Gordon Cole is here talking about the results from Albert's forensics report, as well as identifying the chemical cocktail that is part of the syringe regarding the Philip Gerard, and indeed who is to arrive but none other than Philip Gerard. And as Gordon Cole says, he points him out, and then so this will lead later to the interrogation of Philip Gerard, and we'll get to that as well. But yes, so Gordon Cole is here, and of course Gordon Cole is also here to bring a message to Cooper, let Cooper know about this thing about, or another mention of this character named Wyndham Earl and a chess deal. So something to do with chess, something to do with Wyndham Earl, something to do with Pittsburgh as well, because we understand Pittsburgh and Cooper, something happened in Pittsburgh, and also he was injured or something quite dangerous happened in Pittsburgh. So something to do with Pittsburgh, Wyndham Earl, chess, and the like. And so, and also we should keep in mind too, this idea of, you remind me today of a small Mexican Chihuahua. So what does this mean? This is probably some kind of code or something that maybe Gordon Cole has with his agents. So it's a very interesting type of code. Maybe this is some kind of Gordon Cole speak that we might see examples of later on in the series. Who knows? But it's very fascinating indeed. And indeed, it leads to a sort of a meeting or gathering or a status report or update, not just between Cole and Cooper, but also with Hawk and Sheriff Truman, because as they say, we can hear everything that you're saying from outside. So that everyone is briefed on what's going on, and so Cooper is in some danger because it's recognized that at least the implication is that Wyndham Earl is presenting some kind of danger. Now, what this is, who is Wyndham Earl? Again, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And then, of course, we have to remember, too, the earlier part of the episode regarding Jean Renault and the like. So a lot of elements of danger with Cooper seeming to be the target, but Cooper is Cooper, and so we shall see how he handles it in that great Cooper fashion. That's why he is the great hero, one of the great characters in all of, say, American television, modern American television, one might say. So, but that's not the only thing that we see here. We see other plots picking up. Now, I mentioned Audrey Horne. You have to say that she is recovering. She seems to be very much in a daze, somewhat in a panic or traumatic situation, but she's slowly coming back. She sees Cooper and she says, she was hoping and praying, dreaming that he would come, and indeed he did arrive. And so there is this closeness, and that scene between Cooper and Audrey when she's lying in bed recovering. It's so touching to see that sort of warmth. And I wouldn't. It's not necessarily a type of sexual sort of attraction necessarily, although we know that there was some kind of sexual tension, shall we say, between them, at least in the first couple episodes, and then later on, as we got later into the series, maybe it was more unilateral than it was mutual. But in any event, this connection between the two of them is, I wouldn't call it a sexual tension per se, but it's very honest and direct, and it's like a connection between human beings. They're really glad to see each other, and relieved to see each other, because again, Audrey was in a very dangerous situation, so it could have cost her life. So I love that connection between them. It's really, very tender indeed. And it's not quite the same level of tenderness, shall we say, when Audrey is also speaking with Ben Horne, and she says how she hints at she saw some things when she was at One Eye Jack's, and Ben Horne tries to be the fatherly figure. You can tell that Ben Horne really loves Audrey. I think father to daughter, but there is a distance there, and Audrey is very cold towards him, and Ben Horne seems to be getting somewhat of the message as well. You have to remember, too, the idea that when he's lit in darkness, earlier when he's talking with Cooper, and how Cooper says, he was able to get the money, and what happened, and rescue Audrey, but then he describes how Audrey was injected with heroin, drugs, and you see the almost shock as well, while Ben Horne is lit in this sort of shadow, which seems to be reminding us that of his very maybe ambivalent situation in this regard, because he is her father, and he does seem to have, I think, an undeniable quality of loving her as her father. But you can't deny also the fact that he in some way or another he might have been actually responsible in some way for the situation that Audrey found herself in. So it is a very ambivalent situation indeed. Ben Horn is, but Ben Horn is Ben Horn, and so you love him, you hate him, and I think you can do that both at the same time, and that's why Ben Horn is one of the great characters of Twin Peaks. You love him and you hate him at the same time. You still love him, right? And you love him for reasons like the scene that he has with Leland, and Leland is right. He was released on bail on his own recognizance, but it's curious that he's kind of out and about, and he's almost like it's like nothing has happened. Although I appreciate how Ben Horn says, I would hire you back if it weren't for your indictment. So because you have to remember he's still officially charged, I think. So for the murder of Jacques Renault. But in any event, yes, Leland comes back, and we see Ben Horn being the great, almost slimy, suave Ben Horn that he is, and he's talking about having to delay, make delays because Jerry needs to go to Tokyo and do a background check with regard to Tojamura and this check and this representation that Tojamura seems to be representing interests of Tokyo financial institutions with the money and Ghostwood. But in any event, so he wants to delay it, and so Leland comes in with some wonderful lawyer talk, and he said, "That's my Leland," and they hug each other. Not quite hug each other, they kind of hesitate, and they just hold each other's arms in a very funny moment there. So that's another Ben Horn thing, and that's another Leland thing as well. You notice too that the little stuffed animal that Leland is sitting in front of, and he pulls a little bit of fluff, like white hair fluff from it, and puts it in his pocket. Very curious detail, I think, but it's almost reminding us too of the white hair of Leland. But that's one Ben Horn scene. Another great Ben Horn scene is that with Josie. So we have the scenes, the situation with Josie and Jonathan, and there's a very tense relationship with Jonathan. The implication earlier is that they have slept together, but also that he is essentially threatening her. He has to go back, but she needs to stay to get the money. She's been waiting for a number of years. The name of Eckhart is mentioned again by Jonathan. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. And its implication is that the contract with the relevant document with Pete's signature has been obtained. And so this is something that she wants to give to Ben Horn in exchange for money. And so this is the exchange, and so this is the scene between Ben Horn and Josie at the Great Northern with wine, and that great tense relationship, and the wonderful thing about the keys, one person holding the key to the safe with regard to maybe some very incriminating evidence with regard to Josie and maybe what might happen to Andrew Packard. So Andrew Packard, the story of Andrew Packard, what happened to Andrew Packard. So that's one thing. But then Josie comes back with her own attack, with her own key and her own safe deposit box key, which has, as she claims, evidence, incriminating evidence against Ben Horn. So it's that wonderful, tete-a-tete, or it's a wonderful gamesmanship that's going on here, and seems that Josie's able to get the upper hand here, but the leverage being the money. The money that seems to be coming in from the Japanese interests as represented by Tojamura. So, well played, right? Well played, Josie. So that's another, I think, great Ben Horn scene. Again, you love him and you hate him and you love him at the same time. That's the great genius of Richard Beymer's performance here as Ben Horn. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, that's what a great character. And, we have to say, too, that what is it? There's this, of course, the element in the air of Ghostwood and the money from the Iceland group interest, and Tojamura and Josie, and what's going on. Also, incidentally, of course, Pete Martell and stuff, and the burning of the mill, fire, etc. And then we have to mention too the fire and the mill. But fire is also something that's always being referenced and mentioned. Tojamura and Ben Horn, when they're talking with each other at the table there at the Great Northern somewhere, the mentioning of fire does come up, and fire and also Nagasaki is also mentioned. So a very curious character, Tojima. Who is Tojima? Maybe we might find out a little bit more about who this character is later on. But in the meantime, yes, there is that interest going on with the Ben Horn, Josie Packard, storyline. Incidentally, too, Jonathan and Josie Packard, they're leaving, but then not before Sheriff Truman comes at the last moment as they're about to leave, and one final embrace, one last kiss, trying desperately to convince Josie to stay with the great line, again, I can't do Sheriff Truman impersonation justice, but here it goes, I love you, Josie. I love you. Gosh, right? It's not enough. It's not enough. Right. Oh gosh. So Josie, what a very complex character villain. Is she turning into this type of villainous character? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. There are a number of mysteries definitely going, a number of questions. And Sheriff Truman, yes, I love you. So that's that. So that's that particular storyline. And also, we have to go back to Sheriff Harry Truman, and that incident with Donna, and he seems to be a little bit upset and maybe losing his patience with Donna and James. It's like the boy who cried wolf when Donna is at the police station trying to urge him to do something about Harold Smith and the diary and all that, but right, seemingly to no avail. And talking too about how Dale Cooper's probably the greatest law enforcement officer he's ever met, but maybe he thinks too much. And so that wonderful, again, rapport between him and Dale Cooper, that's one of the lifeblood lines of the heart and soul of the show, one can say. And then we have too the moments with Leo Johnson and Shelley and Bobby, and the return of Leo Johnson back home in this state where he seems to be inert, and his eyes are open. He seems to be awake, but maybe without consciousness, or not seemingly able to move. And we have the appearance of Tom Brockman, and Ian Abercrombie. And so this reminds me too. I know, right? Are there any fans of Seinfeld? I was when I was growing up, I would watch Seinfeld. I know Seinfeld is right. Let me just say, what's an example? Do you remember, it's a little mint, it's a junior mint. That's my Seinfeld impression. But anyway, so we have too the whole plot of Shelley and Bobby unraveling, because, right, the whole idea was to get these insurance proceeds, the money, which Bobby assumed would be $5,000 a month. And that made Shelley, quit her job and stuff, because they thought it would be set for life. But oh no, it's not that. It's $700 and change, apparently. The price of healthcare is going through the roof, and all these charges and stuff. As Tom Brockman says, as he tries to get the heck out of there. And so what is this? This is a bit of a change. Also, Shelley and Bobby still try to make the most of it. They enjoy each other's company, as they always do. But maybe what's going on with Leo? Is Leo aware of something? Is he moving? I don't know. It's getting a little bit creepy. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Leo Johnson. Again, I've mentioned it before, but sometimes maybe in Twin Peaks we might have situations where characters seem to be, for lack of a better phrase, out of it. And maybe out of it for long stretches of episodes, only to maybe reemerge later. We might have to wait and see if Leo Johnson reemerges or not. Maybe he won't. Who knows? But in any event, there's a little bit of a creepiness in the air in terms of the Shelley Johnson Bobby situation with Leo right there. But we'll have to wait and see. And also, speaking of returning home, Nadine and Ed, right? So Nadine has returned home from the previous episode. The roll with the punches, according to Doc Hayward, that's what Ed says, because she still thinks she's 18. Or still in high school. And so this idea of when are her parents coming home, they'll, they have the house to themselves and they can stay home. That moment when she's almost wrestling Ed to the couch, that moment where Ed's kind of hunched over and you see his face, like that wonderful look of Ed Hurley's face. I love Ed's face or his reactions there. It's like I don't know, I mean, again, I'm going to make another reference to David Lynch's Dune. It's like, Ed is trying to wrestle a sandworm or something. Nadine's a sandworm or something. I don't know. It's amazing. Amazing. Nadine's superhuman strength. I love Nadine's character so much. I love Ed's character so much, and they're right. They're Ed and Nadine. So what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? But that's the other line of intrigue. Now, speaking of intrigue, too, we have to mention, I mentioned it before, but now they are going back to the sheriff's office or the sheriff's station, and the interrogation once again of Philip Gerard, who, again, the idea of the syringe and the chemicals and the medication of some sort. Maybe there's something to do, the phrase schizophrenia is mentioned, or the word schizophrenia is mentioned. Then it seems like Mr. Gerard transforms before our very eyes, because after a moment of heightened physical agitation, he emerges and he identifies himself as Mike. And recall the dream from an earlier episode from Dale Cooper, and he reminds us too of the dream as well, and the idea of Mike, and Philip Gerard is the host for Mike. And Bob, who is Bob? Bob seems to be something that requires a human host. So some kind of spirit or entity or something that inhabits the host of a human being. That's something that we're getting a hint of right now. And Bob enjoys himself and is very dangerous because of it. That's the implication that Mike here is suggesting. And they were once partners, but then when he saw the face of God, he changed. And he mentions the arm. He took the whole arm off, which is something that was also referred to in the dream. And then, of course, the phrase and the refrain and the poetry, and the phrase which is "Fire, walk with me." This is also mentioned as well. And so we also get the sense that maybe Mike is somehow or another trying to find and maybe even stop Bob. Who knows? Who is Bob? Where is Bob? We're not sure. Although the hint or the clue is that Bob is somewhere in the Great Northern. And that's where we end this great episode. Another great cliffhanger. So maybe Bob is at the Great Northern. We'll have to find out, because that's where the credits roll, as they say. My dear friends, so that is in a nutshell what's going on in this great episode 13. What do you think? Yes, we'll have to keep going. Next is episode 14. There's a lot to say about that one. But before we do, let us end here. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great TV shows and movies like Twin Peaks. All right, my dear friends, take care and cheers.